Hello and welcome to Pitchfork Radio. I am your host, Shelley Johnson, and as you know, if you have followed previous shows, we are working to expose the doers and action takers of the world who are no longer content to sit back and let somebody else do it, or who are waiting for a savior to rescue them from their own dysfunction or inaction. My guest today is a great example of action taking. In fact, the root of the word action, which is act, is the root of how he describes himself as an activist. The Solutions Institute's president, Andrew Aponick, got his first taste of activism working on an international human rights case involving Latvian-American businesswoman Inara Vilkaste, who was falsely imprisoned following her husband Vladimir's whistleblowing efforts. He then turned his focus to other avenues where he can act as a human rights activist. Andrew works with Activism Munich as a production supervisor, his latest project being an interview of Noam Chomsky following the Paris terror attacks. The interview was picked up by such news outlets as the Real News Network, Salon, Truth Dig, and the Anti-Media. He writes for American News X on topics including the American police state, the U.S. drone war, and the 2016 presidential election. Andrew is an exercise physiologist with a master's in applied physiology from Columbia University, where he also studied biobehavioral science and psychology, and in particular the psychology of power. He helps run a Facebook group of close to 7,000 members, which he calls Mind Banged, where activists connect and discuss the issues of the day. And Andrew, I welcome you to the show today, and it looks like you might have frozen a little bit on your end. So at least we have a nice frozen picture of you in case it doesn't come back.
Well, as long as you can hear me.
Exactly.
Hear me?
Yes, we can hear you just fine. So I'm glad to be speaking with you again. You and I spoke last year when I was still doing my other radio show. And you have just kind of been taking names and kicking butt ever since then. So tell us a little bit more about the Solutions Institute, when it got started, what projects you're working on, and what the point of the site is.
Well, first off, thanks for having me on again.
Thank you.
Actually, I think we were on Martin Luther King Day.
I think we were, yes.
Yeah, very fitting as an activist. But yeah, I was originally brought on to the Solutions Institute, just for short SI, I think around Thanksgiving of last year, initially as their national director of recruiting. Then over the winter, we got a little stagnant, and our founder actually took on another cause, and so he brought me in to make sure that SI is up and running, and now we're back on the map. And right now, what we're working on, as we'll discuss in detail, is the Flint water crisis. And essentially, what we're doing is bypassing the government and not really waiting for them to act. Clearly, they're not doing anything other than pointing fingers. And so, yeah, it was I took on the role of president because not only do I love the theme of the organization, which is well, as the name indicates, getting solutions. But also because a lot of the national leadership, a lot of the activists and advisors that work with us, they more or less come from both sides of the political spectrum. Mm-hmm. So, in addition to obviously addressing issues directly, it was, it's become a great opportunity to bring people together from both sides of the aisle, and more or less what we try to do is get results without empowering the government.
And you know what, I just had a thought when you were saying that about bringing people together from all these different spectrums, ways of life, belief systems, organizations, etc., which is exactly the opposite of the divide, conquer, and distract meme that all of the government franchises participate in. So I just, the contrast couldn't be greater there.
Absolutely, yeah. We're basically nonpartisan, even though people come from different sides of the political spectrum. Essentially, most of our national leadership is anarchistic or libertarian in nature, but that doesn't mean that we don't have people like, for instance, as we'll talk about in Flint, we had constitutionalists showing up, and the Oath Keeper types. Then we had anonymous showing up, and people from other more liberal organizations. And like I said, it was a great opportunity not just to help these people who are in such desperate need, but also to show the world that we can come together and we can unite. And putting politics aside, water is a human right, and so there's no need for any political bickering to take place. And so it's been a successful operation thus far.
Exactly. I mean, consider the togetherness aspect of something such as the right to clean water that crosses all spectrums, all boundaries, and like you said, it's a consummate human right to be able to have water to stay alive. And so the government systems are failing all around us. They are not designed for the benefit of the people. They are designed for the benefits of the psychopaths running the world. And the thing that I find the most amazing about the things that are happening right now is that people like you and people like some of the other guests I've had on recently are developing new systems of delivery for the people's needs, essentially. And you're rising up right next to and separate from the government systems, which eventually will be disempowered and dissolved, because this is how you make change. You create the systems that work, and the old systems have to go away by atrophy, essentially.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's inevitable that a lot of activist organizations, no matter how benevolent their intentions are and how much they want to help people, it's mostly reactive. Like,
Right.
For instance, I got heavily involved in the Black Lives Matter movement, and as great of a cause as it was, people were just hitting the streets and reacting. And I told this to a lot of other fellow activists, and I basically said that when you go into the streets and you don't have a plan and you don't seek solutions, it's kind of like a bunch of adults having a temper tantrum in the street, pounding the pavement, but not really trying to get anything done. And I think it was Teddy Roosevelt said that complaining without posing solutions is called whining.
Yeah, exactly.
So, while there's a place certainly for protest, in terms of raising awareness, and also building camaraderie among the activists itself, if that's where you stop, then we should not expect anything to ever to be achieved in the activist world. So that's what really drew me into SI.
Fantastic, because I don't think you were affiliated with SI last year when we talked, were you?
No. At the time, I was more so, I wouldn't say affiliated, but I was working with Anonymous.
Okay.
And I think they are the most passionate activists in the country, but being rebellious anarchists, it's tough to get them to organize together. So this was actually a great cause to get everyone together. And, there's, like I said, there hasn't been any bickering about, politics or disagreements on what we've done or what we should be doing. And in fact, we brought in a great team member. His name is Mike Kay, and he's a former military guy, intelligence guy, and really good with logistics. And so, being an anarchist, and somewhat of an anon, he's also been able to really inspire them and get through to them, that you continue to be rebellious and not have a system, and a framework with which to work in, kind of rebelling against yourself because you're just completely inefficient.
Exactly.
So it's been a great learning experience for them and for myself. And we're looking to just continue to grow and eventually with all the causes that we work with, which I said is nonpartisan. So sometimes, we'll work with a conservative cause or work with a liberal cause, as long as they're not crazy causes.
Sure.
And, the goal is to not just get them results, but over time build a framework with which we can bring all these organizations together. And who knows, one day we can effectively rise up and get some things done, because whoever's president, as you know, is essentially powerless, outside of war powers,
Yeah, exactly. They're just we're just bringing in the next new puppet. That's all it is.
Exactly. I mean, as much as I like Bernie Sanders, for instance, and politics aside, whether you're a socialist or a libertarian or what have you, by some miracle he got elected, he would still need the voice and the will of the people to get anything done. So forgetting whether you agree with his proposals or not, it's going to be up to us in the end.
Exactly, and regardless of my personal opinion of any of the people running, if you want to call it that, I just mostly refer to it as a beauty pageant, a gigantic distraction from the efforts that people could be making towards improving their lives and the lives of the world around them. But in general, just by installing a new CEO for US Inc., we have no change in the underlying structure, the underlying agenda, the underlying NGO agencies and that type of thing that have no electability, accountability, any of that. So that remains unchanged regardless of who they ostensibly place in the White House to be the latest, mouthpiece for the New World Order.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, what I was going to say is, again, take and say Bernie Sanders or what have you, even as good as his intentions are, he's still a politician who still has to work within the framework of the power given to him. So,
Exactly.
you're not going to expect him to go after the Federal Reserve.
Of course not. And the minute they get elected, even if their intentions, well, I'm going to change the word, the minute they get selected, the minute they end up in Washington, regardless of what their desired outcome of their presidency is, they're taken behind the yellow door and they're told where the bear sits, and they're told that all of their skeletons are known and that they are beholden to the people that put them there, and so they're not going in to work for the people, not even from day one.
Pretty much, yeah. And like I said, it's as benevolent as your reasons are for going into office, you're pigeonholed and you essentially have no power. So
exactly.
The way I look at this presidential race is, it's inevitable. We're going to have a president. I can't see the people starting some kind of revolution, within the next few months. However, regardless of who is in office, the people are going to have to realize that if they want to see change, they're going to have to be the change that they want to see. So that's one of the, besides taking on the presidency of SI, that's what I've been doing online for, the last few years, is really pushing people to realize that, we have to be the change that we want to see, and nothing's going to happen in D.C. in our favor if we just sit around, and pull a lever and pray and go home.
Exactly right. In fact, I have gotten so far to the other side of the reality spectrum that I have rescinded my voting quote unquote privilege, because I believe that creates an unaware contract with the powers that be that I refuse to participate in. So any contracts that we can get out from under, the better off we are. And that one is kind of the top of the pecking order. So I used to be like real politically proactive and saying, if you don't vote, you don't have a right to complain. And I have gone 180 degrees saying that if you do vote, you're stuck with what they stick in there because of the adhesion contracts associated with the voting privilege.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it was, I don't know the quote word by word, but George Carlin had essentially been saying the same thing for decades, that, if you vote, then you have no right to complain. Because you are enabling, these corrupt politicians. And even in the grand scheme of things, if you vote for a really good guy with the greatest intentions, if you don't, if you don't address the system by which they're bound, they're useless.
Absolutely. So I think George said it best when he said it's a great big club and you ain't in it.
Yep. And he said if you believe in the American dream, you got to be asleep to believe it. So
pretty much. Yeah. And is it any wonder that he's not with us anymore?
Oh, I wish he was.
I do too. Well, let's talk about your Operation Flint. I know that there was some mainstream press covering it for a while, but like usual, they go where the newest, biggest headlines are, and if they are losing market share by covering something, they go somewhere else. And so it's not any wonder that we haven't heard anything about this for quite some time.
Yeah, what it's basically coming down to, and it's somewhat theoretical, but you could see this so to speak business model happen in other countries. And what it seems to be that they're doing, aside from ignoring the issue, is the fact that they're basically impoverishing these people. And to the extent where some of the activists that I've worked with, we're actually in the process of purchasing a home or two there, and they're going for like $1,000.
Oh my.
That is literally what some real estate is worth there. And so you drive these people into utter poverty, and then you privatize everything. You bring in a corporation.
That is a business model that's taking place all over the place. Absolutely.
We do that in Iraq, and we're doing it everywhere.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these multinational corporations that are behind the scenes involved, it looks to me, like they basically are driving down the price of real estate so they can come in and purchase the large factories that used to be there. And it might even get to the point where the people are so desperate for work that they're willing to work for basically slave wages.
Sure. Yeah, working for the devil just to stay alive.
Absolutely, yeah. So,
well, would you mind, for people who are not familiar with what's going on there with the water system, would you mind giving us an overview of what has happened and what the results of that have been?
So about 2 years ago, they decided it was the KWA, the Kirigandi Water Authority. They decided to replace the pipes that were connected from Lake Huron, which is considered the Detroit source water system, that were coming into Flint. And what they did is using the power of what's called Michigan Public Act 436. It's basically a law that states that the governor, Snyder, can appoint emergency managers, and which basically override all authority of all public elected officials, even mayors. So they can do things like breaking collective bargaining agreements, they can create new ordinances, they can abolish existing ordinances, they can sell off assets, they can even take away, and how insidious is this, they can take away healthcare benefits from retirees so as to free up income. And as I was telling you earlier, the only one thing that they cannot touch is they cannot void contracts with bondholders. So what it basically comes down to is these bondholders are more important than the actual lives of these people.
Of course.
So about 80 to 100,000 people have been affected, and it was early 2004. I'm not sure the exact date, but basically what happened is as they planned to build these new pipes, they switched over the source, like I said, from Lake Huron over to the Flint River. And despite knowing the fact that they had been dumping all kinds of pollutants and chemicals from the factories and whatnot, and it was documented in government documents, they still decided to switch it over. And there's ballpark figures where in the long run it could save $800 million, but in the interim it's supposed to have saved them $5 million by not continuing to keep that water source. And because everyone's like, why in God's name would they have even switched it over? If you're going to build a pipe parallel to it, why not just keep the same pipe system?
Right.
And so what it just came down to, as always, was dollars and cents. And so the initial estimate was within a year or so they could save $5 million. So if you do the numbers, if there's about 100,000 people there, that basically means that they value human life at $20 a head. And so yeah, that's what went on. And then of course finally it got into the news, and that's because of course people were coming out with Legionnaire's disease, which is very similar to what's it called, pneumonia. Sorry. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, I think it was I have some couple notes here. Sorry. Oh yeah, and then there's trial methrines, which are highly carcinogenic byproducts of chlorine, and they kept it secret that this was in the water as well for 9 months. But what really happened is the lead pipes were so old and the water was so corrosive that once they had switched the source, it just created a complete free-for-all with the leaching of the lead, such that it was seven times higher than what's considered safe by the federal government. And actually, believe it or not, the EPA actually was doing their job. Because as you notice over the past years, they don't really do much regulating. They just allow companies, like Monsanto, to do whatever they want. So there was this, a so to speak, whistleblower who came out and reported, that these levels were so high, and naturally, not shortly after, the guy was removed. And basically, they told the public that we have, quote unquote, an optimized corrosion control program in place, but no such program was in place. And so for about 9 months, like I said, the public was drinking this water. And, even in spite of the fact that the water had gotten almost tan, to some degree rusty colored, they would still shower with it. And now these people have rashes everywhere, and, and the water still leaches into that. And so basically they'd been going through all these emergency managers. And in fact, Detroit actually offered 5 different times. They offered Flint to switch back, and every time they kept offering them to switch back, they kept lowering the price and making the deal better, and lowering the price and making the deal better. And in spite of that, the emergency manager kept refusing. So knowing the fact that the water was highly corrosive and it was poisoning people, and they had no more excuse that they were saving money, they continued to poison the people. And to the point where finally, the last manager, can't recall his name now, he left one final order, and he said that for 1 year, once I leave office, you cannot switch the water back. And, so what it's basically coming down to is it affects the bottom line of this corporation that's coming in, and building these new pipes. And in March 2015, they voted to switch it back. And finally, I think it was January, they finally switched it back. And in spite of that, and in spite of Obama going there, and I don't know if you recall him drinking water and saying that, it was safe, it wasn't safe. And in fact, it's still about 2 to 3 times higher than the federal levels. So, that's where, my organization, our organization, Solutions Institute, came in. And we've basically been, in addition to delivering water, have been planning solutions to bypass it. And as of right now, there's a couple options. There is actually one of the largest aquifers in the world, naturally between the Great Lakes. It's about 200 feet down. And what they actually were doing is cutting off people's well permits for no reason. So say someone had a permit to operate a well for the last 50 years. Out of nowhere, they pulled the permits. So it's obvious that they're trying to prevent people from acquiring the safe water, because they want not only the people to be poisoned, which I know there's not definite proof yet, but also it undermines their bottom line. Because if people are getting water for free, or essentially for free, from a well, then that means they can't charge them.
Right. And, just knowing what we know about the nature of the people running the world, everything is commerce. I believe there's 65 billionaires or something that have more money than 3.2 billion people across the earth. And it is all bottom line. And it is psychopathic, it is parasitic, and they have no value on life whatsoever. In fact, we know that they have announced their desire to eliminate populations across the world to a manageable level. So, yay, you just came back live. Awesome.
Yeah. It's terrible. And I'm not going to get into the specifics because I really have to study it a little more. But a lot of the process by which Flint has been dealing with, believe it or not, is kind of along the lines of the whole Agenda 21 thing.
I agree.
And, they're forcing these people into being poisoned, moving out, lowering the price of real estate. And like I said, eventually probably they're going to have some slave kind of labor there.
Well, and if you see this as a template, which I'm beginning to see. I believe this is what's happening in Oregon over the so-called Hammond Ranch.
Yeah.
It's also happening in California via the drought and the earthquakes and the, you name it, wildfires, etc. The scorched earth policy has been well known for a long time. And the agenda is to get the people off the real estate, scoop it up for pennies on the dollar, and then implement Agenda 21, where they force everybody into the urban inner city crackerbox lifestyle. And so they are using these as proving grounds or templates for this agenda.
Yeah, I mean, the more urbanized a community is, the more, so to speak, caged they are.
Right.
So it's easier to control people. And, it goes along with the old Hegelian dialectic of problem, reaction, solution. So they create a problem. Obviously the reaction is people being poisoned and desperation, looking for any kind of solution. And, of course, the government will step in and offer their highly corrupted solution. So,
exactly.
So what we're trying to do is bypass that and help these people drill wells. There's another organization that SI will be working with over the summer. They produce a tower called the Walker Water Tower. And what it essentially is, it was modeled after the Walker tree in Ethiopia. And the branches go way out like that. And, the only, I think it's kind of like nuts that it grows. But this guy, Arturo Vittori, on a visit to Ethiopia, he saw that and he wondered, how in God's name can this tree survive? And so he actually figured out the biology behind the tree and how it collects water and condensation. And he developed a tower that actually collects about 25 to 30 gallons of water a day. And it's about 25 feet high. It only costs $600. And as long as you upkeep it, it's essentially there for life.
Wow.
So one of the options is to drill wells. Another option is this Walker Water Tower, which we figured out that if you put two of these towers in between, one town or city block, and just say there's 20 to 30 homes within that block, what it basically comes down to is these people can get a free case of water every single day.
Beautiful.
And then the other option is filters, is reverse osmosis filters that every home should be installed with. We're looking through all these options, and we're looking to be up there in about another 4 to 5 weeks for another water drop. And this time it's going to be a lot of community outreach. Last time the community was really surprised, actually, that we were coming door to door. And unlike what a lot of activists do who go, F the police and this and that, we reached out to the police. And it made sense, too, because the police, a lot of them live in Flint. So they're actually affected by it as well.
Sure.
And if they're not directly affected, they have friends and family that might be. So it was just really a resounding success, because in addition to everything I explained, I also, just now that I mentioned, the police are actually on our side now. So it's I'm looking forward to being there as long as it takes. And the police actually asked us, they said, how much longer do you think you guys are going to be around? And we said, as long as it takes. And they shook our hand and said, I'm with it. So for once, activists and the cops are getting together, and cooperating. So
and you're all rallying around a basic human requirement, and that is what is allowing you to cross all these boundaries and all of these belief systems and agendas and what have you, because the biggest thug policeman in the world still needs water.
Yeah, absolutely, and I've had problems with cops. My brother's a cop. So I think this is non-political. This is something that can get them to be on our side, because, like you said, it's an absolute human right. And not only is this what's going on with the government and how they're treating Flint a model potentially, for them to continue privatizing other communities and sending them into abject poverty, is there's a good about 1,000 cities that actually have similar problems right now, and it's actually not out in the public yet. But there are a lot of towns that are about 2 to 3 times higher in terms of the amount of lead levels. So in addition to helping the people, in addition to bringing activists together from both sides, in addition to align with the police and attempting to bring permanent solutions, we're hoping that this, assuming it's going to be successful, and I see no reason why not, that this could be a working model for the other communities to come.
Exactly. And that's what we've really needed is an organization or individuals to come forward with the types of solutions that can be duplicated and that can be spread across the country or wherever else there might be problems, like in Ethiopia, for instance, So that's fantastic. I'm really excited. The thing that struck me with one of the articles that you sent me was the premise that ostensibly the government is there to help us. And, like Ronald Reagan said, if somebody knocks on your door and says, "Hi, I'm with the government, I'm here to help you," should close the door really fast. But nevertheless, they never admit their mistakes. All they do is compound the damage that's being done by the people because everybody comes together to cover up the damage that's been done. And then they require you through your taxes and escalated and increasing taxes to continue to pay for the damage that they're doing to the community. And of course that's happened in Flint. I know their water bills have gone up exorbitantly. And who wants to pay to be poisoned? And yet they are.
They are. They're actually 41% of the community is at or below the poverty line, yet they spend 3 times more than the national average on water.
And if you expand that across the board to what's going on, I guess I would say worldwide, we are all paying through the nose, either via taxation, through orchestrated confiscation, through other mechanisms, to pay to be poisoned through the air, through the chemicals in the chemtrails, to pay to be poisoned through genetically modified foods, to pay to be poisoned and brain screwed, for want of a better word, through the fluoridation in the water. And now, 1,000 communities across the country have to add to that lead poisoning, and we're all paying for our own demise.
Yep. I mean, the corporations and the government officials involved, you know how it is. They walk away scot-free, unaccountable, or if they're about to be held to account, a number of officials in Flint have escaped prosecution by simply stepping down and resigning. If I committed a crime, I can't resign in any way, shape, or form, to not be held accountable. And
the same jackasses who are being let off scot-free are the very ones that are going to haul you in for every imaginable minute infraction in order to raise revenue and pad the bottom line for their unaccountable CAFR funds in every community, which is the off-line balance sheet where they hold their pensions and where they have their slush funds and where they're, virtually not accountable to the people because they don't release the books on the CAFR funds.
No, not at all, yeah. That's a major reason why, like I said, SI does not seek out the government at all for solutions. And we're going to put out an interesting document called Rules of Activism. And one of the rules that we've established is there's only 2 reasons to meet a politician: to get information or to get them to surrender. And that's it. And I don't mean surrender in violence, meaning in terms of bargaining and negotiating.
Sure.
I mean, otherwise, maybe some communities on a local level, there are still some politicians out there. But even just say 5% of the politicians out there have a good heart and they really want to help. They have their hands tied. And of course, when they do want to help or they do want to expose the truth or blow the whistle, then of course, then you have Obama, who has prosecuted twice the amount of all whistleblowers than all presidents in U.S. history combined. So there's just a structure to keep politicians not only enriched by corporations, to keep them unaccountable, but to also keep them from speaking the truth. So they have to step down or go to jail And that's why, of course, Snowden, jumped ship, and I don't blame him. I never did. I still can't understand why some people think he's such a traitor. Meanwhile, the real traitors are the people who are spying on us, poisoning us.
Well, and they've infiltrated everywhere, and who's to say, if he was or if he wasn't a designed, planted whistleblower. Regardless, he woke up such a huge amount of people through the documents that he released through WikiLeaks, etc. So regardless of whatever the potential malevolent intentions might have been by people who hired him, he still woke up millions of people that would never have known about the NSA spy programs and other types of things going on.
Yeah, at that point, it was a conspiracy theory to most people.
Right.
So yeah, it definitely it served its value, and I don't care if he's still working for them. It doesn't matter to me.
No,
he
me
got
neither.
the information out there, and he continues to when what's his name, Assange, leaks certain files that he goes into interviews and explains them. And there's have you ever heard of the applications called Smurf apps?
No.
What it basically is the NSA in conjunction with I think it's the GCHQ, which is Britain's kind of NSA.
Okay.
They can actually access your phone when it's off and turn it on while the phone still looks off. Turn on your microphone, turn on your video, and of course record where you are. Mm-hmm. And so a lot is coming out, and
well, I'll have to tell you a little anecdotal experience I had recently when I was communicating with people coming from different locales to the first Clive and Bundy hearing, which was held here. Apparently, the Smurf app went into full gear on my phone, and I was receiving texts ostensibly from Carol Bundy or ostensibly from her attorney, or from people that were coming this direction from California, from Northern Nevada, from Utah, from Arizona. I was getting all these texts ostensibly from these connections that we were going to meet up in a certain place at a certain time, blah, blah, blah. Well, once we all arrived at the courthouse, I was able to verify that not one of those texts actually came from the people that were, apparently being sent from. And
so you think they're trying to set you up?
I think they were trying to get people to stay away, to not organize, to not be there in mass, and to not be able to testify as to what actually happened in the courtroom. Yeah. And so I did find, I took my phone into the Sprint office, and I had them run a scan on it, and son of a gun, there was a location identified that identified an FBI location. Really? Yes. Yeah. So I dumped the phone, got a new phone.
Oh, they'll find a way to seek you out still.
Well, I don't doubt that, but I want to make it as hard as possible. So.
Well, yeah. Then there was the I wrote a recent article about Facebook and how they're taking similar steps to surveil us. I mean, obviously at this point everyone knows. People call it FedBook. Yes. That that they're spying and passing it off to the NSA and to the prison program. But even just for purposes of consumerism, for advertising and whatnot, I think it was ABC, believe it or not, a mainstream media source, a local one, of course, interviewed a woman, a user on Reddit. Her name was Kelly, and she had basically been suspicious of whether Facebook is surveilling her or not. And so what she did, and the producers did, was they just made up a random story, turned the microphone on her app, and she was talking about an African safari and talking about the type of Jeeps that she would like to drive when she's in this African safari. And then they logged on to Facebook. I'm sorry, it was already open. They looked at the news feed. Within 60 seconds, lo and behold, an article on safaris pops up on top of her news feed. And then not long after, an article, or rather an advertisement for Jeeps also popped up. And so it's not just the NSA, and it's Facebook, it's everyone else, and like you, I had my own personal experience. It was about a year and a half ago, early December in 2014. I had been to a Black Lives Matter march, and the gentleman Captain Ray Lewis.
I do. Wasn't he there in Flint with you as well?
He was.
Yeah.
And actually, I want to get into something his involvement in Flint. But when I had run into him, I had talked to him for a couple of minutes and pulled out my phone to take a picture. And as I pulled my phone out, Facebook Instant Messenger was not only open, but it was recording me, and I'd never downloaded Facebook Instant Messenger.
Oh, for heaven's sake!
Yeah. So whoever went to the trouble of actually downloading the program, and then recording me. And then about 6 months later, it made perfect sense because the Freedom of Information Act, The Intercept, Glenn Greenwald's outlet, they exposed the fact that, just like COINTELPRO, it's still alive and well, and he's one of the highest, or rather the most surveilled Black Lives Matter activists. So it made perfect sense that literally within minutes of running into him and going to take a picture, they decided to download Instant Messenger.
No kidding. Yeah, I interviewed him last year as well. I'm very impressed with his ethics and his morality and his integrity. So I was excited to find out that he actually had gone to Flint.
Yeah. What we did is we created something called the Resistance Panel. And it was a panel consisting of 7 extremely influential and well-respected activists. And so, what we did, to briefly go over what happened that weekend, is...
And let's just clarify, we're talking about Memorial Weekend, so that was just like a week and a half ago.
A week and a half ago is when the operation took place.
Mm-hmm.
But, Friday, everyone from... what started out was 13 states, and actually we organized 16 different states, and we were sending water convoys up. And so in addition to bringing thousands and thousands of cases of bottled water, we also held a kind of like a press conference, like I said, the resistance panel. And so all day Saturday, we delivered water door to door, which actually was a change in routine because we reached out to the police. They didn't give us a hard time about going door to door because what the Flint City Council had decided was that you could only drop off water at, like, say, a church or a community center or something like that. And so, we, so to speak, got permission from the police to go door to door. We handed them out flyers, to let them know that what we're doing. And then the next day, we had a march, and we went all the way to City Hall. And then we came back to the center of town. We held this press conference. And then it just became kind of like a community outreach. We had a barbecue and whatnot. And, and another thing, too, well, like I said, people from both sides of the aisle, we had a lot of guys open carrying. And so naturally you had all the liberals going, oh, my gosh, there's guns involved and this and that. But actually, it was kind of like an olive branch with the police because a lot of these police, oh, you're a cop. You like guns. A lot of them were ex-military. So they ended up, talking about each other's hardware, and passing it off along. So they were trusting each other enough, to go about discussions like this. And so yeah, it was not just a good experience for helping the community and, bringing attention to this, but I'm hoping that it could also show other activists that, not every cop is a bad cop. I know there's always the argument, well, if there's a good cop, why aren't they exposing the bad ones? Mm-hmm. But, rather than vilifying them all, I think it's a lot more effective to try and get them on our side.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
And there will always be bad apples, and, they say one bad apple spoils a whole bunch, but you also have to consider, as much as I really dislike LEOs, REOs, whatever you want to call them, just because of the revenue gathering nature of their daily jobs, I still feel like if you can cross the boundaries like you guys did in Flint and reach out to each other as humans with a common need, a common goal, for their community, it's going to go so much further than all of the, the cop block type mentality where they're all a bunch of thugs. And who knows, this, like you said, this template might be the thing that helps us reach the good ones and helps them step up for their brothers and sisters in the community and stop being such order followers.
Yeah, definitely. One of the what's the expression I'm looking for? Well, for lack of a better word expression, one of the activists, Justin King, he's got a lot of experience creating alliances with police. And so what he was actually doing is he could tell which cars are undercover. So he was bringing food and water and everything up to the police, up to the undercover cops, and they were shocked. But they came out of the car and they were hanging out, so... as much as we distrust them or in some cases loathe them, it's only in our best interest to get them on our side.
Right, and we gather more flies with honey than with vinegar, and every chance we have to do that, we really need to take advantage of it. I think the Facebook mentality is just to hate everything, and when you're in that mindset, not only is it destructive to your own ability to produce outcome and good results, but it also just shares a very low vibrational frequency throughout the World Wide Web. And those types of frequencies and low vibrational energy is exactly what they want to instill in us. We're much more easily controlled. We're much more easily manipulated and maneuvered into the direction they want us to go. And on an etheric level, if you want to get real woo-woo, because I do that quite a bit, these parasites actually feed off of those types of vibrational frequencies. So we're not serving anybody by being angry all the time, unless that anger stirs you to action and helping our brothers and sisters, it is counterproductive.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with being angry as long as you're channeling it properly,
right?
Effectively, non-violently, and so yeah, that's you said it. You hit the nail on the head. They feed off of fear, and as long as we're in fear, we're controlled, and as long as we're reactive, then they have an excuse to lay the hammer down, so to speak.
You bet. And that's the other thing that they keep trying to trigger is the reactivity, so that they can justify their martial law roundups and their FEMA camps and all that nonsense that they think is going to be the ultimate demise of the people. And good luck with that, because there is a gun under every blade of grass and rock in this country, and that is another rallying point, I guess I would say, that runs across the spectrum of, hunters, activists, people just wanting protection for their own homes or their neighborhoods or what have you. So dream on, and jackasses. That's all I can say. You're not going to get the people's guns.
No, it's not going to happen. And, I admittedly, I'm not anti-gun. I'm gun neutral. The way I see it is, you create more laws. It's not really going to do anything. You might prevent a crime here and there, but in the end, you have to really go after the underlying causes as to why there's gun violence. But, that whole discussion aside is, people were wondering, well, why did some of these activists need to open carry? And there were actually legitimate safety concerns, because two activists a couple of weeks before this, they had actually been very vocal about one of the military contractors that were involved in the construction of these pipes. Now, don't quote me on this, but I believe Raytheon might have been involved. But nevertheless, these activists suddenly disappeared. And there has not been yet an investigation to find out why. I mean, very fittingly, of course, they don't want to find out why. But but the whole point is that as long as you're not waving it around, the cops know you're there for good reason. I didn't for the first time in a while. I didn't have a problem with the guns being there. They were in the hands of responsible people, and another thing too is, independent of the police, the feds, with the COINTELPRO and all that, they actually had spread rumors within the community and within the police that we were going to show up with balloons filled with lead paint. And we were going to be throwing these balloons at the police and at City Hall.
For Pete's sake.
Yeah. So in addition to, whistleblowing type activists dying and disappearing, and then there's all the whole psychological warfare going on. So...
Oh, gosh, does it ever end? I swear. In that article I was reading, I was really impressed by the directions from where all of these activists came. I saw a list that said that there were veterans of the Ferguson and Baltimore riots, peace activists, militiamen who stood their ground at Bundy Ranch and Sugar Pine Mine, anonymous activists who have outed pedophiles and shut down D.C., and many more that were well known within the activism community. And that's really exciting because I was involved in the Bundy Ranch standoff thing here, and I've been very, very active in what's happened in Oregon. And it's nice to see that, that the strings are being pulled on the same rug, essentially, that everybody can come together regardless of where their personal levels of research are or their personal levels of information are. We can still see the big hand, the big orchestrated hand that comes through all of this and is doing these things, like you said, through the Hegelian dialectic by design. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, that is going to be crucial in the years to come, is uniting these fragmented causes and organizations.
Absolutely.
And finding a couple causes or issues that everybody can agree on. So, like Flint, water. Everybody can agree that we need water.
Right.
So these are some of the causes. We have some smaller causes SI works with. For instance, I have someone who came to me who is having trouble with the marijuana laws in New York State. So we have individuals, and then we have huge national causes like this. And so the goal is, like I said, is just to get everyone working together finally, because even if there's 20 million activists, 30 million activists, and everyone starts to hit the streets, if we're not all on the same page, you could still have activists that are divided.
You bet.
And then there's a lot of self-righteousness within the activist community, and a lot of people, to them it becomes more important of who gets the spotlight, and who gets to decide this or that. So I'm hoping in the years to come to get more dialogue.
Definitely, and we need to take a vacation from ego-based behaviors. And I'm sure you know all about that with your psychology background. But holy cow, the whole ego dynamic, celebrity worship, spotlight seekers, it's very pervasive, and it's very invasive to being able to create any kind of positive outcome across the board.
Yeah, well, it's been one of their tactics, in terms of propaganda and consumerism, is forgetting the fact that they make a ton of money, off our blind consumerism, and the fact that we're constantly distracted with all the celebrity gossip and BS. But it also puts us into that mind frame of hero worship.
Yes.
And that's what politics thrives on, because everyone puts all their power and their faith and whatnot into one man, or a group of men and women. And, in the end of the day, they've never really served our interests, but now it's more obvious than ever.
Sure.
So if we continue to rely on a few people in Congress or a president or what have you, nothing's going to change. Nothing will ever change. So I've been trying to do my best to point that out, but respectfully, because, the old cognitive dissonance, people don't want to hear the error of their ways, but collectively, that needs to change. It needs to change big time.
It definitely does. So we're coming up on an hour. I know you said you had places to go or things you had to get done, but could you just briefly tell us you told me kind of in private that there are more phases to this Flint thing that you can't really talk about, and you've still got several phases to go, correct? We do.
Okay,
fantastic.
But I can tell you just more or less the next one is going to be kind of hearts and minds. Really, really getting the community together and getting everyone on the same page So I'm particularly looking forward to that one, because that one's it's more or less kind of be like a festival, in the town of Flint.
Nice.
And yeah, people, the media has done a great job of demonizing activists and framing them as troublemakers and ineffective in the sense like, oh, if you shut down a particular block or city, instead of focusing on the issue as to why we're doing this, the media just says, oh, well, they're causing inconvenience to drivers, or they're doing this and they're doing that. So
Sure.
At the end of the day, activism needs a better reputation.
Well, and you guys need to bring your own media, and and definitely just blast the airways with it, because the media is just basically the fourth branch of the control system, and we can't count on them for anything. Once in a while something slips through on a local level, like you indicated, but, please, it's all created news. It's all orchestrated false flag events designed to keep you terrorized and helpless, hopeless, and powerless. So...
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
yeah.
Andrew, where can people connect with you in order to participate if they have a desire?
Well, you can always check out our website is solutions/institute.org.
Okay.
You can also go to our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/activisthelp. That's the Facebook page.
Okay.
And as you mentioned, I have a lot of activists who are in my group called Mind Banged. And there are a couple of GoFundMe. Actually, I didn't mention that. We raised not a lot, so we're looking to raise a lot more this time. But about, I think, $800 for the purchase of water. And what I'll actually do is we're going to go public with also a campaign to purchase reverse osmosis filters.
Right.
So when we go public with that as well, then I'll be sure to let you know. So even if I'm not on the show, maybe you can mention it. In the beginning or the end. Oh, a former guest of mine, has released this campaign. Check it out.
Absolutely, not a worry in the world. And I will put your Facebook pages and your website into the description once this goes up to YouTube, so people will have a permanent record of that.
Yes.
And if you want to make sure that I'm spelling everything right, you could maybe drop me a note in our little Skype window to make sure that I get it all correct. Mm-hmm. And having said that, do you think we've covered what you wish to get out there today?
Absolutely, and then some.
Okay, fantastic. So
I appreciate it.
Well, I'm really grateful to have you back, because you're the kind of guys that need to be on my show so that we can show people that action can be taken instead of liking and sharing and clicking and feeling despondent all day long. You can actually go do something with your information.
Absolutely. I mean, even if it's just donating or providing water, I'll be going through my neighborhood, and all the other activists. We're going to print out flyers and go through our neighborhood. So in addition to collecting water, it also raises awareness. And as you know, the mainstream media has shied away from it. So it's also a good opportunity to get people to know what's going on and continue putting it out there in the independent media, which is our only ally in that.
Absolutely. When you get your flyers put together, if you want to send me a copy of it, I will be happy to take it to, places that I frequent. Trader Joe's, I imagine. I know everybody there will probably donate water. Corporate aspects where the proprietors. I think that would be a really useful energy expenditure. So yeah, please send me a copy of your flyer, and I'll do what I can to get it out here, and maybe we can be a collection site for water here.
That'd be great. I appreciate it. I really do.
Okay,
I really do.
Fantastic. And we did some actual live movement in this video, and some of it stalled out, but I don't think it's going to affect the message. So I just would like to thank you once again for all you're doing and the example you're setting. And please stay in touch so that I have updates that I can share.
I certainly will.
Okay.
Thank you again. I really
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
Andrew, and we'll talk later.
We certainly shall. Have a great night.
Okay, you do the same. Good night.
All right. Bye-bye.